Is the remake of Silent Hill 2 the perfect horror game? No, it isn't. But that doesn't quite tell the full story. So I've spent the last 20 or so days planning, playing, and crafting the video you're about to watch so that I could do the game justice. I'll be diving into the plot, the lore, secrets, and symbolism that make this game so incredible, while also discussing a few things that didn't quite land for me. I truly hope you enjoy my take on it. Welcome to the remake of Silent Hill 2. Our journey begins as we take the reins of James Sunderland, who's arrived in Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary, asking him to meet her at their special place. The problem is, she passed away 3 years prior from an unknown disease, so how does this letter even exist? Despite his confusion, James seeks answers and leaves his car to head through the forest towards the town. One quick note here, by the way. In order to avoid spoiling the symbolism of key moments in advance, I'm going to refrain from spilling the dead wife beans too early, and I'll deliver the story as organically as possible. You quickly find a single glowing red square in a well that acts as a save point. However, the symbolism behind it is something that forms the basis of every horrific encounter ahead. I'll get to that in due time. The first person you meet on your tour de force is a young woman named Angela who's looking for her mother. Actually, that's not right. More tellingly, she says she's looking for her mama. She catches herself saying this mid-sentence and corrects it to mother. This conversation takes place in a graveyard, and she also mentions that she's looking for her father and brother, who she assumed were there, but she can't find them either. She has a clear, anxious disposition, and using a little bit of external tooling magic, which I'll be doing a lot in this video, we can see that her fingernails have been chewed into oblivion. It's these small details that make this game so special, which will be a running theme. Angela warns James that something is wrong with Silent Hill and that it's dangerous, but James, being James, dismisses her concerns and pushes on. The path ahead brings us to Silent Hill Ranch, complete with its new sign, replacing the Comic Sans one from the 2012 HD collection, although hidden in the barn is that very sign, which I think is a pretty great throwback. Further down the path you find your first map of the town. This is complete with nods to a bunch of famous authors, including Robert Nathan, David Lindsay, William Katz, Richard Neely, Thomas Harris, as well as a bunch of others. Taken to the streets of Silent Hill for the first time, we learn that the fog is ever present and that Angela wasn't kidding. This town isn't quite right. Every building has seemingly been abandoned, and huge areas are blocked and covered with blankets, but there does appear to be signs of life here. Following trails of, whatever this shit is, leads you down a creepy alleyway between two houses and through an area with more trails of goopy goop. Inside a house you discover a cool radio and your first weapon, but it's here you'll also meet your first foe. Known as a lying figure, your first enemy takes the form of a humanoid creature that was inspired by the paintings of Francis Bacon. It appears to be trapped in some kind of skin bag. It's also secured in a weirdly sexualized corset complete with platform heels and a thong harnessing a modest amount of cake. Leaving the first area, you now roam the streets alongside many more lying figures and discover a man that seems to have been melted by that vile muck they spew. I will admit though, he does look eerily familiar. You eventually come to Neely's bar, which has your first old school survival horror puzzle in which you need to fix a jukebox. This triggers a flashback for James of a day he and Mary spent together at Rosewater Park. It demonstrates perfectly how we remember things in real life. Not in a linear way, but in the small details that stick in our minds. String lights on a lantern, a lake tour sign, and Mary's hands delicately touching a fence. Again, it's the little touches in this game that make it so memorable. The jukebox shits the bed and spits out a key to the bar, which allows you to continue your progress, where you grab another key from the parking lot of Neely's. This causes 3 lying figures to bum rush you, and once you deal with them, you can now make your way to the Woodside Apartment building. In the reception of the building, you'll uncover a puzzle that requires several coins, in a format kinda like the jukebox, which will be repeated throughout the game. It goes a little something like this. Step 1. Remove a blanket from a weird mechanism that you need to shove obscure objects into. Step 2. Search every section in the new building or area to discover them piece by piece. Step 3. Stuff the weird objects into the thing. Step 4. Profit. Now, I've played my fair share of horror games over the last 30 or so years, and I'm very familiar with this as a concept, but I will say it did begin to wear a little thin in later sections of the game. Speaking of things that wore thin, it's in this building where you encounter monster number 2, the mannequin. Inspired by Ashinaga Tanaga monsters in traditional Japanese folklore, they take the form of 2 pairs of mannequin legs stitched together and held together in place with bandages and braces. The primary mechanic for these things is jump scares. It's not immediately obvious how they achieve this, but the AI behind them is exceptionally well done. Detaching our camera for a second, we can see that they shift into positions that obscure themselves from James's sight, waiting for the right moment to pounce. These examples are a little more blatant, but there were 1 or 2 occasions where I checked out a room to try and set up one of these shots, and they were so well hidden that I actually missed them. You'd think that the jump scares would lessen as time went on though, right? Right? Absolutely f***ing not. Every single time one of these f***ing freaks leapt out of the shadows at me, I shit my f***ing pants. Venturing on, there's a short cutscene where you reach through some bars for a key, but it gets kicked away by a little girl who runs off, and we'll catch up with her later. Not long after these encounters, you come face to face with our 3rd creature and the most prominent figure in Silent Hill history. This was before he was shoehorned into later games and spin-off movies for no good reason. Pyramid Head is actually no threat here, but his menacing presence is palpable. I'll provide a bit of a lore dump on him later on when the time is right. You learn that Silent Hill operates under Walmart rules as you find your first blicky in a shopping cart, and also stumble across a corpse in front of a TV covered by a blanket. Oh, neat! We've got the same jeans and shoes. Cool! Entering apartment 116, we hear the sound of a dude puking his guts up in the bathroom while we find the body of a man in the fridge. In the bathroom, we meet Eddie Dombrowski for the first time. He seems genuinely horrified by Lil Bro in the fridge and tells James that he didn't kill him. James, in this scene, is incredibly soothing in his tone. He's very outwardly calm and has gone out of his way to steady Eddie already. The pair discuss that something has brought them to this town, and James tells Eddie that he should probably leave because there's something wrong with it. Eddie asks James to go with him, but James, with his eyes subtly shifting nervously, tells him that he needs to find someone first, almost doubting the words that he's saying. Eddie appears to take this almost personally before James makes his way out of the bathroom. The keen-eyed among you may have noticed something very interesting about this scene, but if you didn't, what do you notice that's different about Eddie and James? If you said that one of them has an absolutely massive head,
you'd be right.
But that's not the answer I'm looking for. When Eddie exhales, we can see his breath, but that doesn't happen with James. This subtle difference suggests they're experiencing Silent Hill in entirely different ways, something that will only become more clear as the story unfolds. For now, we finish up collecting coins to complete the puzzle from earlier, and then we receive a key for room 201. But it's in there we have another serious encounter with a terrifying creature. Despite the lack of required fun parts, Pyramid Head could be seen symbolically assaulting 2 mannequins before approaching the cupboard that James is hiding in. In the original game, he flees when he's shot by James, but in the remake, he's demonstrating his invulnerability. He's reaffirming the fact that he'll be around for precisely as long as he needs to be. By killing 2 monsters, he's essentially clearing a path forward for James, but at this stage of the game, it's kind of unclear why. Pyramid Head leaves, taking one of his victims with him, and you're finally free to come out of the closet. There's also now a handkerchief on the floor that I played with for a solid 15 seconds because I was so impressed by the physics. Look how good it looks! Leaving through the red door at the back of the apartment triggers a cutscene where you literally cross the threshold into the other world for the first time. If you're not up on your Silent Hill lore, the other world is a hellish version of reality that manifests through the ancient power of Silent Hill. It serves as a metaphor where the worst aspects of a person's mind can take physical form. Everyone experiences the other world differently, as I alluded to earlier with Eddie. For James, it echoes much of the trauma he's experienced with the death of his wife Mary and her final years and months in and out of hospitals as she battled her illness. This is reflected by recurring themes of stained or bloody white bed sheets and areas covered in plastic sheeting. The central puzzle for this area is a grandfather clock, and we need to find the second, minute, and hour hands for it. Each new hand we find opens up a new area to explore as we seek out all 3 to finish the final puzzle. You explore the apartment building, encountering weirder and weirder areas and puzzles within the twisted environment of the other world before meeting Angela again. She's contemplating taking her own life in this scene as she stares into a giant mirror in front of her while toying with a knife. James seeks to calm Angela, but she intimates that they both deserve to die. He sharply dismisses this and is quick to separate himself from her and shifts onto the subject of his wife, asking Angela if she'd seen her. She's immediately uneasy when James tells her that Mary has been dead for 3 years, and when he tries to de-escalate, Angela quickly gets up to resume the search for her mother. But before she leaves, James asks about the knife she's carrying, and Angela asks him to hold onto it for her. She's not sure she can trust herself with it.
No! I'm sorry! I've been bad! Please don't!
When James motions towards her to take it, she's struck by a pretty visceral fear response, before hysterically apologising and leaving the knife behind. It's a troubling scene that gives you more of an insight into the psyche of Angela, but at this stage, it's still unclear why she's trapped in the nightmare alongside James. After this conversation, it seems that the seed of self-harm has been planted in James's head and manifested through Pyramid Head, as he'll now be wielding what looks like a giant version of the knife that Angela gave to you. This is also evident in the gouges present throughout the building now. Journeying through the apartment building reminded me that I'd not actually mentioned the strange photos you're able to find throughout your playthrough for no obvious reason, so I thought I'd show an example here. This was actually a puzzle that perplexed the community for nearly a month before one Reddit user worked it all out, but I won't spoil the meaning just yet. Finding all of the hands for the grandfather clock puzzle opens a door that leads to our old pal Pyramid Head again, only this time, he's not quite so passive. It's a tense game of cat and mouse that has you running around the cages in the arena, trying to get shots off at him until the siren blares and he's called away. As he was leaving anyway, I didn't think he'd hit me again, and I was wrong. Finally getting to experience daylight again, we catch up with the little girl that stomped on our hand earlier. She's holding a letter, and when James asks her about it, she says that he didn't love Mary anyway. But how does she know who Mary is?
What you got there?
None of your business. You didn't love Mary anyway.
What? Hey, wait!
Chasing after her, you end up on a pier where you meet
Mary? No. You're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
In a surreal twist, this isn't Mary at all, it's Maria. A woman that looks almost identical to your late wife and sounds like her too. The difference is that Maria is more overtly sexual. She touches James and flirts with him almost on sight. When James explains his situation with Mary's death 3 years ago, Maria doesn't bat an eyelid at how bizarre it sounds and simply offers to help James find their special place. James, clearly trying to resist temptation, reluctantly agrees to travel with Maria for a while. On your travels, you arrive at Jack's Inn, and Maria finds an outfit in the closet, which is a really nice nod to the Christina Aguilera-inspired outfit she wore in the original game. The route Maria is taking you on is infested with monsters and destroyed roads in what is a really intense section. Eventually, you arrive at a building that Maria has a key for, a strip club called Heaven's Night. My god, when I played this, I genuinely thought that that was the music from the beginning of Balatro, and I was about to lose my shit. Speaking of wildly inappropriate, Maria is joking around on stage and asks if they can have a short break in the club for a drink. James dismisses the idea, which upsets Maria, so he folds and agrees to stay. Maria tries to pour them a drink, but while Maria drinks hers, James restrains himself. This is another nice throwback to the original where investigating the bottles in the bar reveals that James has had a bit of a drinking problem. Bloober team here opted to show the minor detail of James clenching his fist at the thought of taking a drink, rather than deliberately pointing out that he has a problem via text or dialogue. Another interesting note is the brand of whiskey, the Fifth River. Likely a reference to the 5 rivers of the underworld in Greek mythology, each river holding a different purpose relating to cleansing sins, forgetting their past selves and lamentation. Let's pop a pin in that one for now. Leaving the club, you wind up at what Maria believes may be the special place that Mary was referring to, Rosewater Park. Mary is nowhere to be found, but at the end of the cutscene, we hear a scream from a nearby theatre and head in through a window to investigate. In the theatre, we hear the little girl from before having a conversation with Eddie, but before we can reach them, she's run off again. This leads us to a really strange conversation with Eddie. where he's eating ice cream with his bare hands. James points out that he's glad that he's got his appetite back, innocently relating back to him puking in the apartment. But this seems to strike a nerve with Eddie and changes the mood of the whole conversation. He tells us that the little girl's name is Laura, but he seems completely absent for the rest of the conversation. But did you notice something? Only Eddie's breath was visible again. In the next room, we catch a tiny glimpse of something on the screen, and while it's not totally clear who the person is, it kinda looks like James. This is an incredibly subtle hint at a scene from the end of the game. Laura is then seen running out of the theatre, and you and Maria then chase after her into Brookhaven Hospital. While the hospital is a cool area, it was one of the parts of the game that I felt overstayed its welcome somewhat, and I could have done with it being just slightly shorter, but maybe that's just me. As you're exploring, Maria suddenly begins to feel ill and decides to rest in one of the rooms, which allows you to go on alone to find Laura. You find another central room that has a couple of puzzles that require multiple items and begin your search around the massive hospital, where we'll also encounter our 5th monster, the Bubblehead Nurse. This is one of the more normal looking creatures in the game. Well, if you ignore the bulbous vinyl wrapped head filled with blood and other miscellaneous liquids. But you'll also notice that the mouths are obscured by a small red square, much like the ones used at save points. They can take a hell of a beating, but thankfully we also discover a shotgun in the hospital too, which is much appreciated. You work your way through a bunch more puzzles and it's a little while until the next story beat, but oh boy, it is a good one. Unlocking a door to the rooftop leads you to a room that appears to be a dead end, and this all feels pretty normal. But on the other side of this door, someone is waiting for us, and using a free cam, we can actually see that he's already there. This seems like a bit of a dick move from Pyramid Head, but as I just mentioned, we were at a dead end and he actually helped us on our way. We now finally catch up with Laura and can ask her how she knows Mary. She tells James that she's her friend and that they met at the hospital last year. This pisses him off because it doesn't align with his timeline. It causes his mask of calm to slip and he once again shows a slightly darker side. James stops her from running and tells her it's not safe to run around this place because she might get hurt. Laura asks, hurt by what? Which is an incredibly interesting question. Is she not seeing the things that James is seeing? If not, how does her experience of Silent Hill differ from his and Eddie's and Angela's? She then reveals that she needs to retrieve a letter from Mary that she hid in the room opposite. She quickly locks James in the room, and we realise we're not alone. It's time for monster number 6.
In your dreams, fart face.
Please open the door. There's something in here.
Sure there is. A big lying fart face. See a fart face?
Laura! Laura!
This boss is known as Fleshlip and was inspired by Isamu Noguchi's statue, Death, lynched figure in brackets, and the photograph, Man with No Legs, by Joel Peter Witkin. Fleshlip takes the form of a hideous lump of flesh with dangling legs trapped inside a cage, complete with a large mouth protruding from its lower abdomen. But just when you think it can't get any worse, the cage reforms into almost spider-like legs that allow the creature to move around the arena at a rapid pace. Thankfully, killing it after a heck of a battle means you're finally safe. Oh, shit. A very familiar sequence plays out as we're wheeled through the hospital on a gurney that takes heavy inspiration from this legendary scene in Jacob's Ladder. I actually spoke a bunch about Jacob's Ladder in my last video on Silent Hill 3 if you want to check that one out after this one. Waking up, we discover that James has now transitioned into an otherworld version of the hospital. Exploring the hospital, we discover that the room that Maria was resting in is now empty, so we need to figure out where the hell she went. Oi Jim, chuck us a soap would ya? But before we do that, we have another wacky puzzle to solve in a central location. This time it takes the form of 2 combination locks and a key lock attached to 2 spiked chains. The atmosphere of the hospital in the other world is absolutely brutal, and I constantly felt like I was under threat. I think that could feed into why I felt like the hospital section of the game ran for a bit too long though, because all in all, you're here for about 2 to 4 hours, depending on how you like to play. Anyway, you do a whole bunch of sweating, killing, and puzzle solving, and arrive back at the change box, ready to reap the rewards of all of your hard work. And it's empty. Are you fuck? Seriously though, all this oppression, frustration, and fear does feel like it's intentional. You're not supposed to be having a jolly old time, and I think it's this intense on purpose. I can certainly understand how some people could be put off by this section though. Shortly after, we tie back up with Maria, who is pissed.
Mary! Oh. Maria, I thought... Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? I was almost killed back there. I have never been so scared in my whole life. All you care about is that dead wife of yours. You couldn't care less about me, could you?
No, I just...
Then stay with me. Don't leave me alone again. You're supposed to take care of me.
We now pick up the search for Laura again and find our way through a door that freaks Maria out for some reason. In this scene, James shows his first instance of true compassion for Maria in what feels like a poignant moment. He extends his hand to Maria and walks with her, hand in hand, through a doorway that slowly closes behind them. What follows is a mad dash through corridors pursued by Pyramid Head. Maria stumbles as James finds his way into a malfunctioning elevator as Mr. Head draws ever closer before... Maria is skewered through the chest. The door's shut, and unable to save Maria despite his best efforts, James is left alone with his thoughts. The music here finally shifts away from intense and into something more melancholy. You're still in the other world, but it seems Maria's death has had a drastic effect on James's psyche. Searching the reception of Brookhaven Hospital for a final time, we see that Laura has made her escape and is darting away into the night, and we now need to head out after her. By now, you may be wondering why Laura hasn't been absolutely murked by the creatures of Silent Hill, but as I touched on earlier, she's experiencing this town very differently. This town is drawn to people that hide a darkness within them, and it reflects it back at them like a mirror. It just so happens that most can't bear to look at the reflection. The fact that Laura is able to roam freely without issue means that Silent Hill is perhaps reflecting her pure innocence back to her. It's alright for some, innit? While chasing Laura, we briefly encounter monster number 7, the Mandarin. This one becomes more prominent later in the game, and they look kinda human, I guess. Aside from the huge, fleshy arms with mouths on the end instead of hands, yeah. You arrive back in Neely's bar where you discover a message written on the wall in what looks like blood. It says, if you really want to see Mary, you should just die. But you might be heading to a different place than Mary, James. Outside, answering a ringing payphone provides you with a letter and a tool to help you with your next destination, but it also triggers a return to the real world. Through this door, you'll have another encounter with the Mandarin, where I kinda thought that they wouldn't be able to hurt me, and I was wrong. You catch up with Angela again in Rosewater Park, where she's coming to terms with her mother not wanting to see her anymore. When James says he's happy to see her, she has a pretty heartbreaking response where she seems filled with joy that someone could even be happy to see her. James then clarifies that he meant he's happy to see her alive, and you can see her mood shift back to melancholy. She refuses his offer of travelling together, and when he asks if she's seen a little girl, this triggers a severe trauma response from Angela, just as trying to take the knife from her did earlier.
A little girl?
Yeah, Angela? Are you alright? Angela?
No. Please. You shouldn't be here.
Angela, it's okay.
No, don't touch me!
James tries to calm her down. Angela screams at him to stop him from touching her and runs away into the darkness. The subtle details in facial animation in this scene are so eye-opening, and it's moments like this that tell stories that the original game could never technically achieve. You find a box containing a note and a key to the Silent Hill Historical Society building and begin to make your way there. But before you arrive, you can pop back into Jack's inn. Here you head into the room that Heather and Douglas stay in Silent Hill 3, finding Douglas's hat on the armchair and a halo of the sun painted on the back wall behind the bed, which is pretty cool. After a really fucking long walk, you arrive at the incredibly foreboding Silent Hill Historical Society. And if you think the outside is unnerving, just wait until we get inside. Holy shit, my god. Inside are various trinkets and paintings relating to the history of the town, and one of them shows what looks like pyramid heads surrounded by bodies in cages, similar to flesh lips. At the back of the room, you find a staircase that leads all the way down into Toluca Prison. This leads you to a series of holes you're forced to leap into, emphasising James's descent into the depths of his psyche. Arriving in a cafeteria, we find the corpse of a man slumped over a table which, on closer inspection, looks to be covered in frost. This triggers a cutscene with Eddie, who seems to be more detached from reality than ever.
Ain't no big deal. Just put the gun to their head and...
What happened here? Who was that?
I don't know. It just came at me.
Okay. So he attacked you, and you shot him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He made me do it.
Okay, calm down, Eddie. Any idea why he would do that?
I don't know. He came out of nowhere. Tried sneaking up on me in the dark. I heard footsteps, so I turned back and he was right there.
And you could tell that he wanted to hurt you.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way he looked at me, I just had to do it.
He looked at you? I thought you said he came at you.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it in his eyes.
His eyes.
He kept looking at me, making fun of me. I told him not to, but he didn't listen.
Eddie, you can't just kill someone because of the way they looked at you.
You should see your face, James. I was just joking. The guy was dead when I got here. I got you, didn't I?
Entering the cell block area, we discover a variation of the mannequin creature that has already ruined my evening many times before, and this one can climb walls. Fucking great. We pull another sheet off a puzzle in a central area, which this time takes the form of a set of scales beneath a statue. This prompts us to find a series of weights across several areas across the various floors of the prison to add to the scales, which then opens up a series of doors. All of this while being hunted by the new wall-climbing mannequins. Thankfully, you get your hands on a hunting rifle, which is pretty awesome. Aside from that, honestly, this section again just felt like it ran a little long for me. I've seen some folks mention that the combat in this game was repetitive, and while I appreciate it's not God of War, I thought it was great. A huge improvement on the original, obviously. The problem for me was that there were times where I felt like I couldn't move 10 yards without encountering another monster, which became a little frustrating after a while. I appreciate that this game was maybe made for a different generation of gamers than the one I grew up in, so perhaps the addition of lots of enemies was thrown in there to hold the attention of new players. But could this have been achieved by maybe making the game a little bit shorter and having a few less enemies? It might have at least cut down on the fatigue element. Anyway, that's just my take, and I should add that in the grand scheme of things, these are pretty minor issues in what is an otherwise excellent game. But seriously, look how much death I'd inflicted on my last walk out of this single corridor in the central area. Completing all of the puzzles in the prison grants you the execution lever, and we can now solve the main puzzle in this area, the gallows riddle. Screwing it up unceremoniously dumps you into an underground chamber filled with monsters, and you can bet your ass I fucked it up the first time. Eventually getting it right plays the cutscene that every media outlet and YouTuber on the planet has used as a thumbnail. From here, you descend further down through a series of holes and an elevator that leads to a new area called the Labyrinth. Seriously, if this was reality, we would be about here at this point. At this moment in time, it takes the form of an apartment building, which is strange. But the reason will become clear very shortly as you enter a room with a terrified Angela.
Please. I'll be good, I promise. Tell him I'll be good, please.
Angela? Angela, it's me.
No, please. Daddy!
boss is known as Abstract Daddy, and it takes the form of two figures attached to what looks like the frame of a bed. It depicts a large figure suggestively looming over a smaller figure, and it's far from subtle. Angela refers to this creature as Daddy, and it's clear what this enemy represents to her. This is a manifestation of trauma. She'd been abused by both her father and brother under the complicity of her mother, and this is the reason for her disposition. Echoing the separation in the family, we find a photo that has been torn in two. One side with Angela and her mother, the other with her father and brother. The apartment we're fighting in is a reimagining of the apartment she grew up in, and the longer the fight goes on, the more the world falls apart. Wallpaper and splintered wood give way to flesh-covered walls and holes with penetrating pistons and machinery, with a final area that is entirely covered in skin. It's a ferociously visceral insight into the trauma that Angela has suffered. After defeating this monster, Angela appears and smashes the family TV across its back, and James attempts to calm her down. She immediately takes this as a sign that James has some kind of sexual agenda in his protection of her before breaking down under the weight of her trauma. James tries to allay her fears, but this causes her to doubt how true to his cause to find Mary he really is, which causes him to snap at her. This reaction seems to reset Angela into a state where she's looking for her mother again, and she leaves the room. Shortly after this, we arrive in the central area of the Labyrinth, where this corridor covered in legs or arms or something, it's blocking your path. Whatever they are, I love the design of this, and I could not resist free-camming into it. The main area of the Labyrinth is a huge void, so there's only one way to go at this point, and the path leads to someone familiar.
Maria?
I'm sorry, what?
Maria! I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt?
Not at all, silly.
But the thing... It stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Maria seems to have no recollection of being killed by P-Head. She also begins speaking to you as Mary in a dreamy, surreal sequence, never truly giving a straight answer to any one of your questions. When she reaches through the bars to delicately touch James's face, the camera gently slips in and out of focus as we get the impression that James is slowly falling for Maria's seduction for the first time. His eyes drift around the room as he sheepishly leaves, placing a longing hand on the door as he closes it behind him. The void in the central area has now been filled with a giant cube covered in windows and doors. We manipulate it using the control in the center of the room that is, you guessed it, covered in a sheet. Correctly connecting the doors with the pathways in the room allows you to explore 3 separate areas known as Rotten, Desolate, or Ruined. Each of these areas has its own main puzzle you have to complete before you proceed. One part has a pretty cool section where you find Mr. Head's crib after he chases you around for a bit. You can also get a really good look at him through the bars without fear of getting stomped for a change. The Labyrinth throws a ton of monsters at you, sometimes literally, because what the fuck even happened here? It's like someone fired a mannequin out of a cannon at me. But seriously, you fight a lot of monsters in this area, and the world around you is constantly degrading. Logic is constantly failing you in the most surreal part of the game, and I don't think that's an accident. It feels like James's mind is having one last, desperate attempt at stopping him from continuing any further to prevent him from learning his final truth. But who's here to ensure James pushes forward? Pyramid Head. By pursuing you through a leggy corridor, you realise that the limbs blocking your path retract when he's nearby. Once again, he's not serving as just a punisher, he's ensuring that you continue on with your journey. Leaving this corridor, you find yourself in the room that Maria was in earlier, only this time, she's dead again. I wish she'd make her f***ing mind up. The small details in the animation of this scene are incredible. Maria is covered in lesions similar to those that Mary had during her illness, and seeing this causes James to break down. He abruptly catches himself being all caught up in his feelings, and his demeanor changes completely. It's like he's had some kind of epiphany, and he realizes that it's not Maria he's upset about, it's Mary. Leaving the room, you return to the central area of the Labyrinth to discover that the giant cube is now gone, and that the controller has been destroyed. Within the podium that held it now lies Pyramid Head's great knife, meaning you can now have your sword in the stone moment and drag it to the leggy corridor where it will bend to your will and allow you to leave. The next area is home to a graveyard, and 3 of the graves are open. On the tombstones are written 3 names: Eddie Dombrowski, Angela Orozco, and James Sunderland. Your only choice to move forward is to leap down into your own grave. You then move through a blood-filled hallway which felt very Shining-esque and bump into Eddie again, who is berating a corpse.
Couldn't leave well enough alone, huh? You just had to follow me all the way out here. How many times do I have to kill you?
A cutscene plays out where Eddie alludes to the bullying he's received throughout his life and suggests that James has been talking down to him. After Eddie threatens him, James delivers an unholy haymaker, which knocks Eddie to the ground and causes him to leave the room. Left alone in the freezing room, you realise that there isn't just one corpse here. There are multiple. And the worst part is, they all look like James. The next room sparks a boss battle, and we learn more about Eddie's story. Driven to breaking point through constant bullying throughout his life, he turned his attention to a local football player. That's a football player, not football, not that one. He shot the football player in the knee and also killed his dog, which is by the way. This led him to flee from the town, where he would then come to arrive in Silent Hill. Killing Eddie marks the first time that James has killed a real human being throughout the game, and the weight of it is evident in the short cutscene that plays out afterwards. Leaving this room finally sets you free of several hours of punishing darkness and dread, and I cannot tell you how good it felt to be outside again. I'll take spooky Silent Hill over this any day. You hop into a small boat and paddle away from the docks. I would say that this paddling section went on a little bit too long at around 4 or 5 minutes, but honestly I was kind of glad of the reprieve. Disembarking at a small pier, you finally arrive at the final location of the game, the Lakeview Hotel, which even in the fog of Silent Hill looks like a pretty romantic holiday destination. We'll experience the hotel in a few different ways, but first we need to find the central puzzle in this location, which, would you believe, is not covered by a blanket. In the lobby you find a large music box, which requires you to place small figurines into the mechanism to start it, so we set about finding them. The hotel is an awesome final location that sets the scene for some incredible story beats. All of which begins with you finding a note to you about a videotape that you left behind in your last visit, and that it's been kept safe in an employee section. But before we get to that, it's here we run into Laura again. It feels as though she's beginning to warm up to you, as she needs your help to find Mary, as she believes her to be here. It turns out that Laura wasn't kidding about having a letter from her, and it's now that you finally get to read it. Mary writes that she left this letter with a nurse they shared, and that it would only be given to her after she's gone. She describes where she's going as a quiet, beautiful place, and asks her to go easy on James, even if Laura despises him for the way he treats her. She insists that he's a sweet, caring person despite it. Mary truly loved Laura. She finishes the letter by wishing her a happy 8th birthday, and when learning that her birthday was just last week, James realises for the first time that Mary couldn't have died 3 years ago, and he's starting to believe that maybe she's really here. Laura reveals that there's a second letter that Mary left behind that was addressed to you, but opening the envelope, you find nothing inside, prompting Laura to run away to look for it. And so begins our journey through the final section. By this point of the game, I was absolutely sick of the mannequin jump scares, and evidence of this can be seen here. You travel through the rooms of the hotel, solving smaller puzzles along the way, and battling through many more enemies before the hotel transitions to an abandoned state. The beauty of the building is now completely faded as we get closer and closer to the end of the game. But before we get there, we have another boss to face. The mandarins we've faced so far have specifically existed below ground, but this one has made it up to the surface, and you have to pump it full of lead to give it the go-away treatment. You locate a key that allows you to get to the employee section, but using the lift triggers an alarm stating that the maximum occupancy is for just one person. This made me chuckle because it's rare that a game actually acknowledges the fact that you're carrying 200 pounds of guns and ammunition at all times, so I actually applaud this. You drop all of your things into a locker and head down. In an awesome change of pace, we end up in a bona fide 2025 horror game stealth section as we look to evade a couple of mandarins that are patrolling the area. Their paths are pretty simple, but I thought this was really cool. You find the videotape you've been looking for and the last figurine to the music box in the hotel reception down here, and make your way back upstairs to get your stuff back. Solving the music box puzzle fills the halls with music and gives you a key to the 3rd floor corridor. More importantly, it opens your route to the room James and Mary stayed in on their final visit, room 312. I want you to experience this moment just as every player does for the first time, so I'm going to let the full cutscene play out. In room 312, you pop the tape into the machine, sit back in the armchair, and relax.
Are you taping again? Come on. don't know why, but I just love it here. It's so peaceful. You know what I heard? This whole area used to be a sacred place. I think I can see why. It's too bad we have to leave. Promise you'll take me again, James.
In arguably the most harrowing moment of the franchise, James is confronted by the horrific truth that Mary didn't die from her disease. He killed her as she was lying in her sickbed, and this didn't happen 3 years ago. The likelihood is it happened mere days ago. What's worse is that Mary is indeed nearby, but she's in the back seat of James's car all the way back at the beginning. This is touched upon in the endings of the game briefly, but it was also confirmed by the legendary Silent Hill monster designer Masahiro Ito on Twitter. Laura enters the room looking for Mary, and James finally tells her the truth. Understandably distraught, she runs from James, telling him that she hates him. This whole sequence is an absolute punch to the gut. The hotel has now become its final form, an otherworld version of the Lakeview Hotel. But mercifully, it's not intense because you're overrun with enemies again. It's intense because of how you're feeling after that revelation. James's psyche has been completely destroyed, and it's reflected in the hotel. I found it oddly beautiful though, because it looks like the sun is setting outside. It kind of reminded me of those dream sequences in Shutter Island in that sense. I find it interesting that there are no monsters here too. The monsters we faced have all been symbolic representations of James's unresolved guilt, his desires, his sorrow and shame. But with the acknowledgement of Mary's murder, this has all been stripped away, and all that remains is his broken mind. Working through the hotel, you come to a door where light simmers as it bleeds through the window. It's an eerie scene, and it sets up the next scene perfectly. On the other side of the door is Angela, standing on a staircase, surrounded by flames licking at her heels. She's gazing at a castrated male figure representing her father attached to a frame when she realizes that James is approaching. But again, she thinks he's her mother. The incredible track, Theme of Laura repetition, sits in the background while Angela battles with her trauma for a final time.
Don't pity me. I'm not worth it. Or maybe you think you can save me? Will you love me? Care for me? Heal all my pain? That's what I thought. James. Give me back the knife.
No, I won't.
Saving it for yourself. Have it your way. It doesn't change anything.
Angela ascends the blazing staircase, and James comments that it's hot as hell in this room, to which Angela replies, "You see it too? For me, it's always like this." Just like Eddie was trapped in a freezing world, haunted by harassment and bullying, Angela's world has been engulfed in flames following the abuse at the hands of her family, be it through assault or complicity. James leaves the room, and that's where Angela's story ends. We'll never really know what happened to her, but it's pretty safe to assume that It's the worst. We push forward through a short section of corridors punctuated by the bodies of multiple monsters. It's almost as if someone has already been through here. We approach a save point that is nothing like any of the other save points in the game, and I think it's time we unravel something that I hinted at right at the beginning. Yep, right here. I told you I'd come back to it. Now we know the true reason behind Mary's death. The symbolism behind the monsters that James has manifested becomes far more clear. The 9 red squares in front of you represent the 9 delusions that James has conjured since he first arrived at Silent Hill, and each one of them symbolises a key part of James's trauma and guilt. The lying figure's movements are reminiscent of a hospital patient squirming in agony and symbolise James's feelings of confinement. The name also refers to his wife's body in her sickbed, the sexual nature of their lower body hinting at James's suppressed desires. His unmet desires for intimacy while Mary was sick, and guilt for feeling this way, are also reflected in the mannequin. Their inhuman appearance compounds his objectification of women and embodies distorted perceptions and unresolved shame. The bubblehead nurses, which clearly tied to the staff that would have been on hand for Mary, link back to Mary's murder. Their twitching, jittery movement is tied to them literally suffocating within the liquid-filled vinyl masks that they're wearing. The fleshlit boss again represents James's memory of Mary in her sickbed, with its broken skin being visually reminiscent of Mary's during her illness. The giant mouth present on its abdomen being symbolic of the verbal abuse that James suffered as Mary struggled to cope with her inner turmoil. Abstract Daddy is quite an interesting creature because it's Angela's manifestation interpreted abstractly by James's psyche. While it symbolises the abuse Angela suffered at the hands of her father and brother, we can never really know what the creature looked like to her. Instead, James is seeing Angela's monster as the manifestation of his own buried emotions and feelings towards Mary. The mouth motif returns again through the mandarins, whose arms have mouths at the tips. Only this time they're able to shoot tentacles to attack James. I think that leans further into the verbal abuse from Mary, and it's now manifesting in physical harm. This brings me onto a big one: Pyramid Head. James's manifestation for guilt and desire for punishment. Mr. Head's purpose is tied specifically to James, and rather than simply punishing him for his sins, I prefer to see it as him violently removing them until he acknowledges and confesses to them. This is why his inclusion is so dumb in later games and movies, by the way, but that's a conversation for another day. He resembles a punisher from the town's past because that's what James desires, but he doesn't seem to be complying with that as a concept. Instead, he's guiding James on his way, killing monsters that could otherwise impede him. But there's one manifestation that James has contrived that even Pyramid Head can't kill: Maria. Every time we encountered a new manifestation in this video, I explicitly signed them a number. The lion figure being the first, the mannequin being the second, etc. The keen listeners among you will notice I actually skipped a number after Maria because I wanted to protect the story for as long as possible, which is really hard for a game that's like 20 years old. For clarity, Maria isn't just a woman, she's a figment of James Sunderland's fractured mind, born from his guilt and grief over killing his wife. She exists somewhere between a fantasy and a nightmare. Like a character from a dream, she defies death repeatedly, forcing James to question what's real and what isn't. Physically, Maria is nearly identical to Mary. Same voice, same face-ish, but where Mary was frail and reserved, Maria is vibrant, seductive, and overtly sexual. Maria is the embodiment of James's subconscious wish, a reimagined version of Mary. Her very existence challenges James, serving as both temptation and torment. As the story has progressed, James has begun to care more deeply for Maria, and one of the ways in which Pyramid Head punishes him is to kill Maria over and over again, reaffirming the fact that he's weak and powerless to protect Maria, just as he couldn't protect his wife from the illness. But that leaves one remaining square unaccounted for, and I'll come to that soon. But before I do, we've got another boss battle to deal with. Entering the next chamber, we find Maria hanging upside down on a rack alongside not just one, but two isosceles executioners. This feels like both her and James's final judgments. Without saying a word, she's executed in front of James again, and while he cries out in anguish, he seems to have finally realised the symbolism of these creatures.
I know what you are. I know why I needed you. But it's all over now. I don't need you anymore.
The fight is a pretty cool one anyway, but what's really interesting is that the more damage you do, the more the arena crumbles around you. Once you do enough damage to the bosses, James has essentially proven that he no longer needs them. He's no longer blind to his sins, and he is finally owning his shit. Rendered obsolete, the Pyramid Heads take their leave in the most brutal way. Leaving the arena, you travel down the longest hallway in Silent Hill as James recounts a conversation he had with Mary before she died, where he brought her flowers to her bedside. Mary refuses the flowers because she feels disgusting because of what the disease and the drugs have done to her. She demands that he leaves her alone before realizing that she's just projecting her trauma and begs for James to help her before breaking down in tears. Just before we get to the final boss, we find the last of the 26 strange photographs that I briefly mentioned before we fought Pyramid Head for the first time. Their meaning wasn't clear until about a month after the release of the game when some genius on Reddit figured out the meaning. I'll link the post in my description because it's incredible, but basically Dale Robinson, his name, Dale Robinson, discovered that the 26 photos spell out the message, "You've been here for 2 decades." Now, this could just mean that, hey, you've been playing the story of Silent Hill for 2 decades because the original came out in 2001. Cool, right? But the wilder conclusion for this message is the time loop theory. I am absolutely not getting into this one, but in a nutshell, the theory suggests that James is stuck in an endless time loop that forces him to relive his past sins and endlessly torments him. It's kind of why I cheekily mentioned some of the corpses that have looked like James throughout the video too. When the creative director at Bloober discovered someone had cracked the code, he made a tweet about it and someone replied, "The loop theory is canon, Jesus." To which he responded, "Is it? Son of a bitch." Away from the hellscape of X and back to the hellscape of Silent Hill, James climbs a staircase and we're met with a shocking sight. At the far side of the room, we see Mary gazing longingly through the window at the world of Silent Hill. Maria has one final attempt at tempting James as she cosplays as his dead wife, which is pretty shitty, isn't it? It's a pretty shitty thing to do. What's really cool is that the naming on the subtitles changes from Mary to Maria in an instant.
I'm here for you. So what if I'm not her? I can give you what she never could. I can be better than her. What else do you want me to be? What else can I be?
I am so sorry, Maria. I really am. But this has to stop. It's time to let it go.
No.
What?
I won't let you do this to me. I won't let you go. I can't!
Say hello to square number 9. Mary has now twisted into the creature before you with much of the symbolism reflecting many of the themes I discussed earlier. The nurse-esque outfit, the cage she's trapped in, the tentacle shooting from her mouth. It's a culmination of everything we've seen so far. Dealing enough damage causes the cage to reform into the spider-like legs we've seen before, and also causes the floor to give out, Hell in a Cell style, and you, as mankind, fall into the pit below. Surviving down here causes another shift in the arena as the ceiling collapses and the fight continues until we pump enough lead into the creature, or in my case, I got the last hit with a pipe, which is kind of funny. The cage now shatters around her, and she'll repeatedly call out to James until you strike the final blow, which I did with the shotgun.
Mary.
Hey, handsome.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
Yeah. You did. But that's not why I did it. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
If that's true, then why do you look so sad?
Mary.
It's okay, James. Here.
What is this?
It's what you've been looking for. In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you to come and see me. But you never do. So, I wait. Wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know, I've done a terrible thing to you. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think about is how unfair it is. The doctor came today. Told me I could go home for a short stay. It's not that I'm getting better. It's just that this could be my last chance. Even so, I'm glad to be coming home. I missed you so much. But I'm afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Every time you come to see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if you hate me or pity me. Maybe I just disgust you. I'm so sorry. When I first learned I was gonna die, I couldn't accept it. I was so angry. I struck out at everyone I loved. Especially you. And that's why I understand if you hate me. But I want you to know, I will always love you. Even though our life together had to end like this, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. Well, this letter has gone on too long, so I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after I'm gone. Which means that as you're reading this, I'm already dead. But that's okay. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I just hope the pain will end soon, so that you remember me for who I was, and not what the disease made me. I want you to go on. I want you to live for yourself and for others, like you did for me. James, you made me happy.
This is where the story ends. James has confronted his guilt after he learned the truth about Mary and chooses to move on rather than succumbing to despair. He leaves Silent Hill with Laura, the young girl Mary cared for, symbolising a path toward healing and redemption. This ending suggests that James has accepted his past and is ready to live on, honouring Mary's final wish for him to move on with his life. This ending is called Leave, and while it's known as the true or good ending to the game, it's only one of a possible 8 conclusions. The endings have a bunch of requirements, but they largely boil down to your actions having consequences and reaping what you sow. I'm not going to dive into them all in great detail, but I will give you a quick summary of all of them. The Maria ending requires you to show a lot of attention towards Maria and develop a bond with her, rather than seeking absolution for Mary's murder. This one proves that Eddie was right about James, and proves that he was completely selfish. It sees you leave Silent Hill with Maria by your side, but the moment I love in this ending is how James reacts to Maria coughing. He's just repeating the same mistakes as he did with Mary. No compassion for Maria, only acting as if her coughing is an inconvenience to him, proving that once and for all, James is just a complete prick. The in-water ending requires James to act recklessly with no regard for his safety throughout the playthrough. Driven by guilt and sorrow, James sees no way to go on and, when returning to his car, drives it through the safety railing into the lake. This ending also shows James looking into the back seat at Mary's body beneath the sheet. Mary's monologue plays out as her final letter drifts to the floor of the lake, highlighted by a shaft of light in what is a really sad but beautifully crafted scene. Leave, Maria, and In Water are the only 3 endings you can achieve on your first playthrough, but there are a few others you can earn during a New Game Plus. Rebirth requires you to collect cult items throughout the game in an attempt to complete a resurrection ceremony by appealing to the old gods of Silent Hill. The ending shows James rowing Mary's body out to an island on Toluca Lake, but we'll never know if it was successful as the credits roll. The Stillness ending is an alternate version of In Water, where, when James is grieving the loss of Mary in his car, Mary actually appears behind him. He breaks down and apologises to her as she touches his face and whispers in his ear that it's okay, before he drives through that same safety railing and into the lake again. The Bliss ending is an interesting one where you have to locate and drink an hallucinogen before watching the tape in room 312. The ending implies that because of the drink, he only saw the happy vacation clips on the tape, rather than discovering the truth about Mary's death, meaning that ignorance truly was bliss. The 2 remaining endings are just joke ones, but worth mentioning nonetheless. They include a wacky UFO one where you meet a version of James from the original game known as Space James, where he reveals that you're a clone before being abducted after being shot by a ray gun. The best part is that that's not even the weirdest ending. That accolade belongs to arguably the most famous joke ending in gaming history, where you discover that a cheeky Shiba Inu pupper was behind everything the whole time. Funny, menacing, and cute in equal measure. The song playing over the credits after this ending is also pretty majestic, so I'll stick that on my end screen for your listening pleasure. Silent Hill 2 remains one of the most haunting, emotionally complex horror games ever made. The remake, for all its changes, has managed to reintroduce this psychological masterpiece to a modern audience, capturing much of what made the original so powerful, while adding its own layers of detail and nuance. So I'll go back to the question I asked right at the beginning of the video. Is the remake of Silent Hill 2 the perfect horror game? Well, it depends. Some choices, like the increased combat encounters and pacing in certain areas, might not sit well with every player. But at its core, the game succeeds in delivering an unsettling journey into guilt, grief, and trauma, just like the original did. Whether or not it's the perfect horror game depends on what you're looking for. But what's undeniable is that it remains one of the most thought-provoking and emotionally devastating stories ever told in the medium, and I think the remake does improve on the original in many areas. The town isn't just a setting, it's a mirror reflecting on the darkest corners of human nature. It forces you to confront James's guilt, his grief, and ultimately, his fate. Regardless of the ending you achieve, one thing is clear. Silent Hill 2 doesn't just want to scare you, it wants to stay with you. And in that regard, this remake does its job. This is the first main series entry in the Silent Hill franchise since Downpour over a decade ago, and I can confidently say that it was worth the wait. Whether or not it's a return to form remains to be seen, but having recently watched the trailer for Silent Hill F, I've got high hopes that a new generation of gamers can fall in love with the franchise just as we did in the early 2000s. Thank you for watching this video. It has been an incredible journey, and I really hope you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.